Hey everyone, Dr. Maria Sampoulos here, your host of the Reframing Eye Care podcast. Today's guest is Anit Patel, and we're going to talk about how you can help grow your business and ways that are new, innovative ways to do so in today's marketplace. So thank you for coming on the podcast.
Well, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
It's a pleasure to have you. For those of you that do not know, he is the founder of My Business Care Team, visionary entrepreneur. With his wife, owns multiple practices in Atlanta. His wife's an optometrist, and he's been able to identify challenges and really help optometrists, with local hiring help and things like that. And it's really turned to the Philippines and other countries to tapping into talent and cost-effective ways to help practices in the labor pool arena. So he's built a robust team and able to handle these tasks over the phone, representation for insurance verification, billing, virtual assistant, and other soft skills. So I think it's really important in this podcast to get some information, how he started this business, how we can utilize his services. As I think a big pain point right now has been in the industry staff and retaining staff and what they're doing and what they're asking for, for beginner skills in our practices. So again, thank you for coming on. I think this is a great opportunity for doctors to learn more about this and how to utilize them in their practice. I mean, one of the big things has been this, vision plans not paying enough, and then wages always going up, and just hard finding staff. So this has been I think a nice opportunity for doctors to take advantage, because I even looked at it in my practice too, just to do recalls or something like that as well. So thank you again for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate that.
Can you, give us, how do you know how your ability to scale, metrics, policies, procedures in a practice? Give us the nitty and gritty on a business for doctors that might not look at these things.
Yeah. So I think, so like you had mentioned before, we have multiple practices in Atlanta, Georgia area. And, we've had to come in and realize, okay, well, when you have one practice, just one doctor and just a handful of staff, you don't think about scale. You don't think about, how do I, something might go wrong. But when you have 3 people, it's easier to manage. When you have 30, it becomes way more pronounced. And so there's a lot of little challenges there. And so we look at a few key metrics, right, for scale. So one is, what kind of processes and systems do we have in place? Do we have those in place? 2, do we have someone who's accountable to specific task? And 3, what are the metrics associated with it? So, you typically want to be financially, you want to be in a certain position before you typically scale and grow. But there's a lot of conversation around that. And we can get into detail of that if you want. But rule of thumb is, you want to be roughly, you want to keep your cost in line, and you want to be between 10 and 17% profit margin after all the staff, including the doctors, are paid, including yourself if you're the doctor. And so in that point means that you have probably have a fairly healthy practice. And that number is that percentage is actually a lot higher when you're smaller, and the bigger you grow, it's closer to that 10 to 17%. So that's kind of the rule of thumb.
Excellent. So can you tell us, what are some ways to be able to stabilize staff and increase the bottom line by having even fewer staff in the office, right? I mean, we have vision plans haven't reimbursed us an increased rate in 20 years more probably. Equipment keeps going up. We have inflation. We have, front desk staff asking for $25 an hour with no experience, no really soft skills. Don't really care, unfortunately. I think it's happened since COVID. So give us a little bit of information on that and how your company really can make a difference in a practice.
So I'll share with you a story of how we started this company. So 2019, we actually, at the time we had, I believe, 4 locations, and we centralized our phones, thinking that would be easier. And we augmented the team with some folks in the Philippines. Fast forward, COVID hit, and we decided to go all in on that piece and figure that out. So we spent the good 4 or 5 years figuring out how do we really manage a remote team to be able to do this effectively for our phone answering and augment our staff. So that way the folks I do have in office are focused on critical things for the patients. One metric to look at is your non-doctor cost of labor should be 24% or less. And that's an all-in number. That's with any contract labor, any benefits, taxes, insurance, whatever you give as benefits, all that should be included in that 24% or less number. And so if you're higher than that, that's an opportunity to keep it down. And so we were looking at ours, and ours was creeping up. It was getting over that mark. And so we decided, well, let's go to places where they have a decent labor pool, and we can train them on optometry and the way we like to do business. And that way it's a win-win for everyone. We're able to pay our staff in office more, and in turn, we ask more from them. So we hold them accountable performance metrics, we hold them accountable numbers, and making sure they're doing activity. Because since now we pay a little bit above market for some of these positions, we're actually able to get better talent, and so we're able to ask more from that talent. And so we lowered our cost for staff because we took some of the more admin functions and lowered the cost there. We needed fewer people in office, and the people we kept, we pay them better. And we saw a 33% increase in our revenue per patient by doing that.
Wow. And how has that been like for staff morality and things like that? Like you kind of outsource the things that they don't want to do and focus more on, the optical, let's say, selling contacts, taking care of patients, things like that.
Yeah.
And I think also, when you outsource to the Philippines, how does that work with like time? I think they're whatever they are ahead. Are they 15 hours ahead? What is the time difference, and how does that affect your practice?
So we don't have just people in the Philippines. We do a global resourcing model as well.
Oh,
so
okay.
Most of the staff is in Philippines, but we like to we'll go wherever the best quality staff is and talent for the economics. Most of our staff right now is in the Philippines, but we have a hybrid staff. Some, depending on the services that you have with us, some could be some US based folks that you work with. But the Philippines, there's a 12-hour time difference. They work a graveyard shift. So we have clients everywhere from East to West Coast. So, it's a pretty long shift that we have for folks, but we're able to service that pretty well. As far as the, effectiveness, there is one of the things is, I always tell people there's kind of two options, right? There's the VA route, which is kind of popular right now with optometrists. And then there's a BPO route. And there's a subtle difference there. A VA, you have to do all the management. And if you have, the time and the bandwidth, that's great. I recommend going the VA route because it's going to be less expensive. But if you don't, if you need a more of a solution for that, then a BPO is what we are. We do all the management, training, making sure we vet folks properly, integrate systems and processes. So there's significant amount more management involved when you do it that way. And so I apologize. Let me back up. Did I answer your original question?
Oh, you did. Yeah. No, this is all interesting things, this is a great way to, create some innovation in the practice. And I think also, these people probably are happy to work extra shifts. I think the mentality is different over the world than here, working past 5 and, feeling unfortunately entitled, is what I've found, when I try to hire staff. So people that want to work are happy to work to do that. So there's plenty of opportunity as well. So for them. Yeah.
And I think so. I'll be frank, right, and honest. That some of that culture still exists everywhere, right? It's sort of a hey, you know what? Why am I doing this type thing? And I need more. That happens everywhere. We've just done a good job of creating a culture, both in our offices and remote. That's not the type of person that we want. So we really hire by our values, and our values are very specific. So in my business care team, our values are grow. It's goal-oriented achievement, relentless learning, outstanding performance, and winning together. In our brick and mortar store, our values are care, curiosity, always on stage, relentless, and elevated. And every day we talk about our values. What does that mean? What behavior should we be seeing? Perfect example, in our office, we use artificial intelligence to help with coaching and training. And so every day they're supposed to submit a recording, and they get a scoring back from our algorithms. And if they're not doing the recordings, it becomes very obvious, and it's be like, hey, you're not following our value of curiosity and elevate and relentless. These are things required for you to get better, and you're not doing them. And so we quickly work the people out who are not the right fit. It's not the right bus for them.
I think that's great. Yeah. I mean, I think the AI that you're doing is like a daily progress report, and then you're not really have to micromanage them because it's just part of the system. You have to watch it, and the system kind of tells you. So tell us a little bit more about that, because I think that's important too for culture And doctors are so busy now, they're wearing multiple hats. They're short staffed. You really don't know what's going on at the front desk. So how can that help?
With us, well, if you're using a service like ours, one thing I would always say is make sure you have something that's always recording the calls. And we always record our calls, and we actually use artificial intelligence to analyze all the calls as well as manual audits. So as long as there's some sort of oversight, to that. As far as the in-office piece goes, that's really more around deploying training and giving feedback. And that has to do with how people learn. And so what we find is that most doctors, they're usually either are managing themselves or their manager has never really, they've never really been like a manager that drives improvement, right? In most cases, especially in smaller offices. And so they don't really even know how to begin to really develop people. And that's not a skill set. Most of the times it's an optician or a tech that was great that, hey, we think we like you. Now you can be our manager for our office. And that's not necessarily the same skill set required to be a good manager. And so what this does is it helps with that feedback loop that managers need to give staff for training purposes. And it's an automated way, just saying, hey, do it every day. And then it's a very coaching feedback, right? It's very much like, here are the categories. Here's why you didn't score the top tier. And this is what you can do about it next time to improve. And it's a great way for people to learn. The people who really adapt to it and really stick with it, they're like, oh, I get it, I like it. And you can see improvement in their scores very, very quickly, like within a matter of a week or less. The people who don't get it, there's deeper dive opportunity to sit down and say, hey, are you really wanting to do this? And if not, maybe this isn't the right bus for you, right? Maybe this isn't a good fit. This is not necessarily the right environment for you, because we do need someone that can do these things.
Yeah. Give us some examples, like other cases that you might have, used it, the virtual phone or AI and things like that doctors can incorporate into their practice.
So most doctors that really use us are the ones they're like, hey, we're really overwhelmed. I'm having a tough time finding just general staff. I need help with the phone so that my staff who's here can focus on the patients, and I don't have to use them to answer phones. I can use them to actually be in front of patients, doing patient care, completing prescription plans like selling glasses and contacts, the revenue generating items, the highest value items. And so those are the folks that usually call us. Then they're the ones that usually get the most bang for the buck when they hire someone to do this for their phones. If you have someone who typically, it'd be nice to have the phones answered, but if you hire someone else, if you only need like one person in the office, it may or may not make sense, right, to do it that way. So it really, you want to look at how much volume you really have and how many people you actually need in your offices. The sweet spot for VAs is usually that situation where you maybe need one person that can just take over some work for your team, handle some overflow phone calls, just to be like a buffer zone. If you really need something like systematic and scalable, that's when someone like a BPO like us can really make a difference. Is where it's like, okay, you know what? I don't have to worry about it. You got it taken care of. Everything from soup to nuts. I don't have to worry about outages, call outs, any of that stuff. You got the training. You're going to rotate staff out, all that. So it just depends on what you really need in your office.
So give us some information, like if I wanted to put this in my practice, right? Mm-hmm. I think about it. Yeah, it's great when I'm in the office and I'm seeing a lot. When I'm there, I want to maximize my time. I want to see as many patients as possible that day, because I want to try to take that extra day at the end of the week, right? Instead of working 5 days, I try to do it in 4. Yep. Especially during the slow time of the year, right? Take extra time because it's just like it's ups and peaks and valleys in optometry. How can I incorporate something like this into my practice to help on those days? What is the cost? What is the ROI? How does it help with end of the year with taxes, benefits? I think in general, I think it takes a load off, my star players in my office, like you said, to sell. I just had a new hire and she wants to know how, to get more, hourly income. And, I said, I'm happy to give you, sky's the limit, but you got to know a skill. It's not, you're not, it can't be just, it's on the phone. You got to have a skill where you know how to sell. So I don't have to do it. Or if I do it in the exam chair, that you're, taking it from the exam room and bringing it to the optical. So if you can learn that, then sky's the limit and everything else. So But tell us how, we can utilize your services to be able to do that and develop the people that want to, because we have more time.
So I'll tell you how we work, and it's not everyone works the same way, right? There's other folks that do similar things. What we'll do is we'll sit down and we'll we have clear lines of accountability set up. So that's one thing you want to look for. So we'll ask for one manager or one person from your side to be the point of contact. We'll sit down with them and we'll start creating SOPs. So what are we going to handle on the phone? And we draw like a decision tree and all the things that we would handle, and then we create process maps for everything that we would handle. And then once that's signed off on, we start going live. When we go live with it, then that's when we start taking the phone calls and we start giving daily and weekly reports to say this is how we're performing from a quality, from a service level and productivity standpoint. And so we're always measuring ourselves with these numbers and reporting out on them. What we'll also do is we also give extra, because we notice that, it's not just that optometrists need help with, right? So we'll also give things like our SOPs or development plans that you can use and integrate for yourself. So our clients typically get a lot more resources. This AI tool for quality, we're beta testing it for free with some of our clients as well. Ultimately, we're trying to be helpful in terms of just practice management outside of just answering phones and maybe filing insurance and doing those type of things. So what some of the best practices, like you're saying, what I find is if you have a development plan with clear objectives that people need to hit and ways to assess those objectives, then they don't ask as much. They have a clear path. And it's like, okay, that's what I need to do to get there. Let me go figure that out and how I can get there. And here's how you do it, right? Here's the different paths. So in our office, we have let's say a tech development path or an optician development path. They pick the one they want to do. And they said, okay, well, if you want to go down the optician path, these are the things that you have to deliver on. At some point, there's also some certification that's required, but we also tie it into metrics. So you got to be doing the daily coaching, weekly coaching. You've got to be giving us feedback. You've got to be tracking your own numbers. And then at some point, you have to hit these numbers to be able to get promotion. And if you don't hit these numbers, you don't get a promotion. And there's a simple performance element to that as well.
Excellent. So give us like your journey in optometry. How did you get into it and eventually start this company?
So my background is actually in engineering and manufacturing. Started with Dell right out of college, being a manufacturing engineer, and then left there. Started a Lean Six Sigma company because by the time I left Dell, I was their head Lean consultant for 3 other facilities. And for those who don't know, Lean is just a operations methodology. It's a pretty cool methodology. It works really well. And then I went to Cleveland Clinic doing something similar. So I worked in healthcare there as well. My wife and I got married and we bought her a practice. And so I helped her get it off the ground. And after we had our first child, I didn't want to travel as much because I had my consulting company. I was traveling all the time. And so we decided to say, hey, maybe I can help out with the practices and let's see what we can grow here with the practices. If she's a doctor, I can help with the management side. And so that's how I got sucked into the field. And honestly, I love the field. It's a great field. I know a lot of folks don't like it, but yeah, I've seen several industries and it's a good industry, to be honest. The private practice optometry, there's a lot of complicated, there's some complexities, but that's what also makes it so nice. You got the retail, you got medical, you got vision. Certain states allow certain procedures. So depending on what state you're in, you could do something, you could actually make a whole practice just on specialty procedures. Yep. And so it's kind of exciting field to be in. It's a lot of room for opportunity.
There is. You got to think outside the box now. I mean, a lot of doctors complain. There is opportunity. You sometimes just got to work a little harder just to kind of get there. But there is opportunity, specialty. I mean, there's a lot of things, but it's not as, let's say, easy as it was before just hanging up a shingle. So you got to really, put your business hat on, wear multiple hats, and do that. But I mean, your wife is, I think very fortunate that you guys work together because you're building it. She could focus on being the best doctor and you can kind of focus on the business, which you like, right? I mean, you understand that thing. Tell us what it's been like to, work with your spouse every day, because I thought it'd be great to work with my spouse if we had multiple practices. We wouldn't work together. He'd be at one, I'd be at the other. But I think at the end of the day, I mean, that someone really cares about the business like you do, because, the ultimate goal is, to take care of our family. So
there's pros and cons to it. I would not recommend it for everyone. it was not always an easy journey, especially because my wife doesn't come from a business background, right? So she's come from so it's very different conversations, and we've had to learn how to turn it off, right? We can't talk about work 24/7. So how do we break that? So we've kind of developed ways around that. Now we have a management team, right? That's sort of the buffer zone, and they sort of take care of everything in the office, and she goes to them now instead of me. So it becomes much easier for our relationship. But it can be challenging, but also rewarding because we're building something together, and that's always fun, and spending time together to do that. And we both understand the business, right? So when we come home, it's not like one person has to describe the other person what the problem is. We already know, and we understand and can empathize. Sometimes it hits a little too close to home, but it can be good and bad.
Yeah, of course. Tell us about how you think about strategy and growing a practice. Because when I think about opportunities in the practice, you kind of just see it if you're that business type of person, what can get better. I remember going into another practice as fill-in and the first thing I was like, I would change this, and that. And I can't believe they're doing this. And I can't believe, the front desk doesn't know how to check this. And tell us how you do that and strategize for doctors that maybe just got in a routine over the years and got comfortable.
So I want to address two things. There's tactics and there's strategies. And the difference between both, I think doctors are really good at tactics. Strategy is a little bit different. Strategy is the direction that you want to choose to go and how you're going to decide what to say yes to and what to say no to. And so when we look at strategy, what we did with my wife is my wife wanted a certain lifestyle with the business, and she wanted a certain type of clientele and a certain type of operation. And so when we were looking for her a practice to buy, I actually hired someone. We started cold calling practices in different markets that I knew would be good for us to buy practice. And so we settled in Marietta, Georgia, which is a nice part of town. It's a little real family oriented, right? More residential and good school system, that type of thing. And so it tends to be a little more higher income. And so because of that, we're able to do 30-minute exams, develop relationships with people, with families, because that's how she wanted to practice. So that means we had to say no to a lot. So the practice that we took over was taking medicated first. And we started doing that initially, but it just didn't mesh with that model. And so we had to say no to Medicaid. So when I talk about strategy, that's part of it. And then we went to another approach of, okay, well, how would we grow not from not product strategy, which is what almost everyone in the industry does, but from a service standpoint. So what do I mean by that? Most people, when they grow, especially the bigger players who are doing roll-ups right now, think my eye doc, all those folks, their strategy is more product sales and more volume. And that's not the way we wanted to scale because that doesn't create what we wanted to create. The challenge is it's very people heavy. So if you're coming in and you have a really good relationship with your doctor, it's that warm feeling with the staff. That's a very different experience than if you go into a VisionWorks or a My Eye Doctor. And so that's a strategy decision we made. Like if we're going to scale more towards the high touch side. And there's challenges around that, but we make decisions around achieving that goal, not the other goal. So a great example is a lot of places will have doctors or techs do acuities. We have doctors do acuities because of that extra time with the patient, because we're doing that extra high touch. And so when a doctor might come in and say, well, you should just have the tech do it because I can get more volume through here, which is true if that's your strategy. If you want more volume, then that's a great way to go about it. The financials all work out to be roughly the same, right? I'll give you some big numbers. Your labor plus cost of goods should be around 60% or so. No matter how you slice it, total labor plus cost of goods, right? Contacts, glasses, non-doctor, doctor payroll, everything around there. If you can get around 60%, that's a good win. However you want to slice that. So your strategy, make sure that's whatever strategy you pick, that should be the goal, the model. And then you have advertising, marketing, building cost, rent, things like that also fit into that. And there's certain percentages there, but those are more fixed. Those don't really depend on the strategy as much. Can, but not as much. I'll pause there. Any questions? Because there's a lot more I can do.
No, that's great stuff. I mean, I think it's that, I think as I've been practicing almost 17 years now, and I think when you're younger, you can kind of have the energy to do it. But I'm thinking of myself in the next 17 years. We want to build a practice that patients are there because they want to see you. They value your services. We have good quality. products that we can sell. So we don't have a lot of remakes. We don't have a lot of, troubleshoots, things like that. But also, so I don't have to work as hard as you get older, right? But this, the net is still there, because as you get older, the way that I see, like, your expenses get bigger too. Like, your kids go to college, you're used to a certain lifestyle that you're used to doing, if that's what you want. And then you want to save a little more for retirement too, right? Because you never know what happens. So I think you're right. I mean, it just depends on what your value is, and what your values and what your strategy is. And yeah, you can be mid to high, and do that. But over time, you get burnt out with high volume. And I think a lot of doctors that I talk to for, that work in any practice that do that, and it's not sustainable for long periods of time. So find a specialty, find a passion. And once you do that, I mean, I think income always comes regardless, is what I've found as well. So, and patients will see that. You take the extra time to do the VA, but you're also chit-chatting with patients, right? You're building a relationship, building a rapport, and talking to them.
One thing I will say is that it has to match your patient base. Yeah. So, if the median income in your area is 30,000, it's going to be hard to develop a high touch practice, right? So I think because most people will come within 5 miles of your practice to your practice. And so that also fits into the strategy, as well as like, what location are you in, and how do you address the market that's there?
Yeah, I think it's also when you're buying, and I've looked to buy practices, you see how doctors are billing. A lot of the older doctors are, 60% of their income comes from optical. The rest is whatever it is. And there's a huge opportunity. I think in the industry, it's 17% is medical. So I think there's a big opportunity for young ODs to go in, just add a simple thing like add an OCT, right? I mean, even now with the virtual fields, they're so cost effective. You can have that with all the other additional things. Billing insurance and keeping those patients. I always said that once you give that patient the glaucoma drop, they don't go anywhere else, right? I mean, it's something you watch and monitor. And it's unfortunate in our industry. I think the data is only 4% treat glaucoma. I mean, that's low.
That is low. I would have thought it would have been higher.
Very low. I was surprised. Yeah. I mean, I think even primary care, early I think a lot of docs should be handling it and feeling comfortable. I think we have a lot of technology too to help us track and monitor as well. So I think that's very important. So building that clientele, depending on, who your patients are. Of course, you should know your demographics, who your patients are. But, you can't be everything to everyone, but you got to think of yourself. Where do you want to be in 20 years? And, do you want to see 30 patients a day when you're 60 years old? Well, I don't want to, I'm tired now, I mean, imagine later, you want to have some time and enjoy it. I think it's a great profession. So, and there are great ways to grow it. What have been some other ways that you've grown these practices, kind of having that outside look into the practice? Because your wife's the optometrist. She knows what patients want, but it's great to have an outside look. My husband's an engineer, and just asking his opinion on how they see it. Even new hires, I'm like, what do you think? Can we do right and wrong? Because it's maybe patients think like that too.
Yeah, there's a lot there, actually. And so let me take one step at a time there. So as far as you've got, so a couple of things I see that the biggest thing is just hiring someone who has experience, because they're desperate for someone. So waiting until you're desperate to hire is one of the things that can really hurt a culture. And can really hurt you, because then what happens is you hire someone and they're not the right fit, and they cause a lot of issues, and they can cause different challenges with everything. And so what ends up happening is that they cause your good employees to leave sometimes. And so that can be a challenge. And so taking more care and more time up front to do the right hiring makes a world of difference and impact. Focusing on the who first and the what second, that is a big thing. I actually do with a lot of folks, I do like a discovery call. Well, I'll actually go through worry to wealth, right? And there's like 4 different areas to kind of look at, to where you could look at, hey, strategically, what's going on. You mentioned one of them is billing strategy. Are you taking advantage of the medical billing versus vision billing? Another one is around, like I said, staffing, staff training, staff accountability, progression plans, those type of things. Another one is just we call it my wife and I, our goal is a 1 month we call it a sabbatical, right? Just taking a month off from the office once a year. And so this year we're actually going to Portugal for the month.
That's good to me.
So yeah. So, but that requires a certain thing that you have to do in a certain scale. You have to have other doctors, people trained.
But you have to have good staff for that. You have to have good staff for that.
Yeah, and it's a goal every year. So we'll see. If we can do that this year.
What month do you go? What month do you go?
Yeah, we take the kids. Our kids are young, so like July.
Oh, July. Yeah, July is typically slow, so I usually go to Greece. Usually it's 2 weeks.
Yeah,
we go. But yeah, you have to have that vacation and do something. But you have to. In order for me to go, you have to have good staff that is going to take care. But unfortunately for me, hopefully you'll be able to do it. I can't unplug. I still like, hey, put the WhatsApp app on your phone, and I'm going to call you and make sure how's everything going. Just text me at the end of the day. Just give me a overview. Make sure there's no headaches. But usually doing it around 4th of July helps because nobody's around either. So it's just like you can enjoy your vacation.
We so we implement EOS in all of our companies, and if you're familiar with EOS or traction, it's a great way to institute those systems and processes that work well. And what I find is if someone is in a role that they're supposed to be more proactive and they're supposed to be driving projects and they're not doing it, they're usually not the right fit, right? The who is not the right part there, right? And so being able to assess that is really important. So there's a tool in EOS or traction called People Analyzer, which is a really eye-opening tool that I think a lot of doctors get. That's the most bang for the buck. That and what they call the accountability chart. Those two things were the biggest bang for our buck in terms of impact for our office.
Excellent. Yeah. Well, I want to thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Just for those of the listeners that are interested in your business, can you give them like an email address they can contact you, or a website where they get more information if they wanted to implement your services into their practice?
Yeah, absolutely. mybcat.com, like my name here, stands short for My Business Care Team. And you can book you can send me a message straight through there. You can book a time with me straight through there as well. Be happy to talk through any challenges you're having outside of, do you need outsourcing or not? I'm always looking to help folks who are in the space because trust us, we went through the same pains. And so my aim is just to help the industry. Specifically, I like helping private practice owners because it is a field that seems like it's kind of under attack, and it's harder for people to survive. Like you were saying, it's harder to really make it work, especially you can't be a doctor and a manager and a business owner all at once, right? It's really hard to take on 3 roles. So
it's hard. It's hard. Yeah.
So
I want to thank you.
Be happy.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. And thank you for, giving us some information of how, your practices have been successful, and just like a different overview on business and optometry and with, virtual assistants and AI, which I think is the future, honestly. And to be able to cut some cost for some of these doctors to be more profitable and continue to grow their businesses, because it does take time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much for coming on.
And thanks, Maria. Thanks for having me.